Hey, hey!
Pitch deck for HighRes.io. I'm here to ask for $10 million at a $1 billion valuation for my company. We are in the 21st century. We are losing a ton of money because of frameworks. Over 90% of the websites on the top 100,000 list use a framework. They lose a ton of performance and it sucks. So I'm going to present, Mishko did Quick, I'm going to present Quicker. It's a newer, better framework from 2030. The fundamental issues, and I think Mishko touched on it in his talk, is that frameworks really don't understand users today. It's just like everything is separate. The monitoring system is separate, the analytics is separate. All the tools are don't understand each other. This is our company. We have Better Bonnie. It's like Shai's Bonnie, but better. He's a founder in Google, Microsoft, Apple, Meta, and he's really good in JavaScript. We're going to talk about JavaScript frameworks. So you probably know most of these slides, at least like those of you who have been doing JavaScript for a while, right? So we had like jQuery, then we had like frameworks, then we had component-based frameworks that are composable, where you can just take parts and stick them in other parts. Now we have like this shift to user-based frameworks, and what are we going to move to next? So the thing that we're going to do next is the learning framework. Everything today is component-based, right? You have, we don't even need to mention this. No framework here does anything different. Everything basically has a component syntax, and that returns a component. That gives us modularity. It's good. It didn't used to be this way. If you did like Backbone 10 years ago, you had components, but you couldn't just reuse them freely anywhere. So this is good. Everything does code splitting. Some frameworks do it better. Mishko talked about Quick. Quick does code splitting better than Angular, but it's still pretty basic. The ideas he's exploring are so good because they're like the gate to they're the floodgates. When we break them, we're going to do amazing things. And then there's reactivity, which virtually everyone but Angular and React does. So these are like reactive things on a scale. So Vue is reactive, Svelte is reactive, Salt is reactive, there's like Quick is reactive, Michel is reactive, like he's here. If he's here, this is like the most reactive person in the world, Eric Meyer. He is like super reactive. And our framework is obviously reactive. The way to improve here is that all the frameworks today, they pretty much, like Mishko said, they do the same thing. They use proxies. The place this fails is when you have long lists and data structures. Let's say you have an array and you dot filter it every time in a computed value. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to do that computation over and over. So we can definitely improve there. Everyone does SSR and server-side generation. You can't get good SEO without it. We can tune the amount of generation based on statistical data. Sorry, I'm hearing myself, so I'm just going to turn off the volume real quick. We can actually calculate the amount of server-side rendering we do based on statistical data and user workflows. OK, so now we're getting to the fun part. Once the framework is aware of everything, of the components, of what the app should look like, we can take snapshots of the app and using visual testing and testing tools, shrink your code. Because here's two examples of code that does the same thing, right? This creates an observed value, and it uses that value, but that value isn't actually used anywhere. We can do that and do a more advanced form of dead code elimination by just checking the app is functionally the same, analyzing user flows, and just deleting code that isn't used. We take your component, we refactor it, we see if the output is still the same, and if it is, great. Which gets us smaller HTML bundles. It gives us automatic deduplication of code. If you have code that repeats in several places, it does better than gzip, which is basically what you have today. We can replace CSS with smarter CSS for smaller bundles. So let's say you wrote Flexbox and you're targeting a browser that supports grid, and the grid syntax is shorter. We can do that automatically for you. We can do dead stat elimination and not just dead code elimination because we are aware of your app. And we can profile your app in runtime based on real users and automatically replace parts of your components to improve performance, which is very hard to do if you don't have like the end-to-end integration. So all of this work is because Quicker is aware of everything. It's end-to-end. It's not just the rendering. And this lets us do really cool stuff. For example, we don't need to serve the same bundle to all the browsers. Like, it makes no sense that a user on mobile Chrome and a user on like desktop Internet Explorer, which is, thank God, dead, will use the same, will get the same bundle. Maybe you have a checkout flow, which is common in contentful websites like the ones Mishko talked about. That should get a different bundle that optimizes just the checkout flow. Maybe, yeah, this is just the checkout flow. So we don't just do this. This is Webpack, right? It takes stuff and bundles it together. We can create different bundles for the same site for different use cases. Yeah, and again, we can optimize that bundle for, which isn't what we always do. It depends on the website we are creating the bundle for. But we can create the web, like, optimize for SEO scores. Next thing we can do, what most frameworks do today, quick improves on that. We load bundles based on routes, which is really, really, really naive. It's not a good approach. What we want to do instead is we will look at what modules the user already has, because we know that, because we are holistic, and we will only load the files that are missing. And the way we get over the fact caching is missing is that we will push to the CDN the deltas of bundles based on common user flow. So if the user always goes to the home page and then the login page, it makes no sense to like load an entire new login bundle and not load just the delta between those flows. Right. What we do today, like the common practice, is we prioritize the resources for above the fold, right? There is the part the user is seeing and the part the user isn't seeing. That's not how users use websites. Like, I don't know about you, but when I enter most websites, I will scroll a bit sometimes. It depends on the content I'm seeing. If I am looking at a new iPhone, for example, I will usually scroll to the tech specs. And this is information you already have about your users, right? Your product departments already know what and where users scroll. So we can figure that out, and we can prioritize resources based on how they're actually used, rather than something naive like above or below the fold. And again, there's a bunch of stuff that's super not fun to set up, like APMs, like performance monitoring, interaction tracking, error monitoring, and we can do all that for you. Like, you don't need to set up different tools for all those things. Those are part of the framework, which means Quicker understands your users. Because we have all your analytics, we can generate your tests for you. We can generate your end-to-end tests. We can generate your performance tests. We can generate accessibility tests. And those tests are going to give much better coverage than what you currently have, because they're based on what your users actually do. They're not based on like some hypothesis. And then we can do that with A/B tests. So for example, let's say you have a button. Instead of for the salesperson to say, hey, let's change that from like 10 to 15, they can run an experiment, and the framework, they will just say what the thresholds for all your components are. And the Quicker will do very smart multi-armed bandit A/B testing, and will automatically pick the right variants for you and prioritize them, because it's all part of the same framework. So once you define like a checkout flow in your end-to-end, which again is automatic based on what your users are doing, you just hit a button with the thresholds and it will optimize everything. And of course, because it's so holistic, everything is compliant to accessibility and internationalization, which lets us like generate and improve accessibility. So we will look at how users are using your websites with screen readers, and we will automatically improve the screen reader experience based on how those interactions are happening. And this isn't limited to just like screen readers and accessibility, but it's where the impact is easiest, because a lot of websites just aren't very good with those users. Currently, we generate bundles based on like what the user sees, but we can generate bundles based on what users care about, right? If I have a website And there is like one piece of information the user actually cares about and a bunch of like fluff around and below it. And I have the analytics for the website. So I know what users are seeing and what users are clicking. I can change the bundle and like the rendering of the HTML to show a shimmer for the stuff the users care less about and progressively load that. So instead of just seeing above or below the fold, we get a much smarter rendering. And then we can segment that based on stuff like connection speed or geography or like any other piece of information about the user. Now this gets really cool. Remember we generated our end-to-end tests and we generated a bunch of stuff to validate our code, which we needed to do anyway. This lets us automatically refactor common libraries. So let's say you have a code using Axios and you want to refactor to fetch. You use the same technology that GitHub Copilot uses, the GPT-3 model. Run it through your tests and you get the code back with fetch, which saves around 40% of refactoring efforts in front-end development teams. We can also use the exact same technology, exact same concept, just to find, mitigate, and remediate very quickly supply chain attacks, XSS attacks, and other similar attacks. If there is a vulnerable library, we will automatically upgrade it in production, zero developer effort, run your tests, and things will happen automatically for you. This gives us also the ability, because we control the end-to-end test, the performance test, and the build, we can generate builds in under 3 minutes that will also run your entire test suite, your end-to-end, the performance test, accessibility test in parallel, and create a production deployment, which means developers using the platform automatically get a 3-minute end-to-end pipeline running thousands of tests concurrently and giving you confidence to deploy. We will do cache invalidation automatically. We will run machine learning models, again, over your user interactions, and we will do something way smarter than just saying, OK, there is a new version. Let's throw away all the client code, because client code is extremely important for like websites that are entered more than once. And we will use service workers and like edge computing to give you a hot reload-like experience. So you don't actually get a hot reload, because that's a very confusing experience for production, but you get like the closest thing you can. We will convert with adapters, like we don't actually take React and convert it to quick automatically to like the components. So we have integrations baked in based on like open source code for React, Angular, Vue, yada yada, for stuff like Gmail, or Asana, or Shopify, to automatically pull those components, generate components for quicker, and run them, which should save you a bunch of time. These are just a bunch of ideas for frameworks. This is our estimated market flow. So right now we have around 500 million users, and in a few years we'll have around 7 billion users. The business model is obviously, like everyone now, it's a SaaS subscription model, where there's going to be like an on-prem version, which again, this is actually like a good model, because everything here needs our server. It's not like it's not a new idea. The framework itself is going to be open source. That's the common theme now. And there's addings requiring machine learning and server compute. That's going to be a SaaS model. What the users say. So here is Mishko in 2018 saying, one day I will meet the famous Shai Resnick person. This is Shai saying, very original naming, I will buy a lot. And this is like some dude no one knows saying, best thing ever. So this is good. And that's all the ideas I got. I tried to keep it quick because they're over time. And I think I could keep questions to the panel in the same light. So before the thank you, we are hired at Microsoft to work on performance code. Feel free to ping me. If you want to work on Node.js and open source, feel free to ping me. And this is Moshe. He made his first pull request in Node that got merged today. So congrats, Moshe. Just to show it really happens. And thank you.
Thank you very much.